want to take you guys back to the past, just for a little while. I want you to think about the date 1770 here in Australia, a date where Captain Cook and his men sailed into the shores of Eora Nation in Sydney, and he claimed Terra Nullius. Now, for those of you who don't know, in the 18th century, Terra Nullius was a legality that you could claim lands based on 3 particular criteria. Now, one of those criteria was, if you can't identify any civilised society, that land is yours. Now, what we do know is that the Eora Nation, or the Eora people who lived in those lands for hundreds of thousands of years, were very much there. But those people, and Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people across Australia, until 1967, were classified as flora and fauna. Now, my theory is this. If we really want to talk about reconciliation, we need to talk about the past. We need to understand those fundamental things that happened in first contacts. And in first contacts, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people were misunderstood and misrecorded. In 1967, however, the reason why things changed is because 90% of Australia voted for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people to be included in the census and for the first time to be identified as human beings in this country. Now, at the time, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people weren't classified as humans, they couldn't vote. That means that non-Indigenous Australia, in its majority, voted for Aboriginal people to finally have a voice and to be seen in this country. Now, if I don't know if that's the most powerful movement of reconciliation in our history, I don't know what is. But a lot of people don't celebrate that date. Now, I want to fast forward. I want to go to 1983. And on this day, 23rd of October 1983 at 9 p.m, the most beautiful, strong, amazing little baby was born. Now, that child was a child of a non-Indigenous woman and an Indigenous man. The Indigenous man came from Whadjuk Nyungar country, the very place that we are gathered here today. My mum's history, a mix of English, Russian, and many other. And growing up, I never really associated there being a difference between being Nyungar and being Australian. So when I say I'm Nyungar, I mean that I'm Australian with an Indigenous heritage. Yeah? But as I grew up, I realised that there was a difference. There was a 2 worlds that exist. One of my first experiences of racism and discrimination was by a young guy. He was 1 year older than me. And he said, "At least I'm not a worthless black person like you." And I went home and I said to my mum, "Why would someone say that to me? I don't understand." More and more I had these kind of experiences, and not just from non-Indigenous people, but from my own people. I was too white. I didn't fit the particular description of what an Aboriginal person should be, and therefore I'm not a real one. But there was one particular instance that happened in my life that made me really reflect on what Aboriginality really is. It took me a while to get there, but I was a victim of sexual abuse by my grandfather at the age of 6. When I finally came out about that many, many years later, a lot of people said many different things to me from my own community. They said, no, that's culture. Aboriginal men are allowed to do that to children. It's an initiation process. Or I had some people say, Aboriginal people have got a bad enough name, sis. Don't go talking about that kind of thing because it's just going to make us look worse. And so at 15, I ran away from home. I had issues with drugs and alcohol. I was homeless. I went as far as Sydney. I was lost. I was confused. Because I knew in my heart that these things, this traumatic experience that happened to me really wasn't Aboriginal culture. But I didn't really have a lot of opportunities in the Western world to really discover or connect with what that Aboriginal culture is. So when I was about 17, my dad, one of my biggest mentors in the world, he said to me, "Daughter, I want you to come home. I want you to come home and go to school, get an education. I don't want to get that phone call where I've got to bring you home in a box." And I don't know why I listened to him that particular time, but I did. And I came home. And for the first time in years, I actually did something good for myself. I realised that I was really smart. I was really clever. Beautiful, smart, clever. Wow. I could have a real future. Now, the worst part of it is when I went to this place to finally go get this education and change my life, the person that committed these acts on me was teaching at the same school. I had to stare my demons straight in the face. And I knew I had to stay at uni, I had to keep growing in my knowledge in the Western culture, but I really had to grow in my Indigenous cultural heritage too. So I went to amazing places like Dumbarton, an Indigenous healing centre, where you learn language, you learn all the different cultural protocols, you connect with other people, and you use culture as a healing. But I was also getting that healing by going to university, learning how to construct arguments, learning about all world cultures, not just my own, but all world cultures, how people work, how people think. And it developed me into the strong woman that you see here today. Now, in 2006, I was one of the first young Nyungar women in our community to stand up against abuse in communities, and my offender was sent to jail for 7 years for the crimes that he committed against me. And I sent a very strong message to not just my community, but to all communities across the world, that if you think that sexual abuse is a part of Indigenous culture, you're wrong. And if you go back to 1770, we've missed a lot of opportunity to really engage and understand what Aboriginality, what Aboriginal culture, and what Aboriginal people are really about, and how much that is of value to not only our people, but to all Australians. We are one of the lucky places in the world where we have one of the oldest continuing cultures ever known, and there is a real benefit in that. It's a real benefit for our economy. Aboriginal people dying 20 years younger. If we really sat down and understood all the different protocols, the understandings, the worldviews of Indigenous cultures around Australia, we could actually start cutting those life expectancy gap. We take that pressure off the health system. We build our economy. The amount of knowledges that Aboriginal people have that can help with all facets of our life in regards to education, interactive learning, medicinal properties, holistic medicines. There's a whole world of knowledge out there that we yet in Australia may not have exactly saturated into what we perceive as Australian culture and society today. Look, Aboriginal people aren't the only ones who suffer from racism and discrimination. Australians cop it too, am I right? Anyone travelled overseas before? What's the kind of questions that people ask you when you tell them that you're Australian? Do you have kangaroos going up and down your runways? Do you all speak like Steve Irwin? Do you all wear thongs and not the ones that we wear in Europe? And out of a lot of studies that have been done around the world, Australia is reflected as this racist country. And just how I would not agree with all the stereotypes about my people and our culture that are out there, I know that you guys can also understand that the stereotypes or maybe the misconceptions about who Australians are also something that impact you and wish that they weren't there. So, as a survey, the few things that people have said to me about Australian culture is this: that we're drinkers, that we're racist, that we all love AFL football, and we all have barbecues. We burn the crap out of our meat in this country. This is just how we roll. So I want the audience, this is interactive TEDx, can you believe this? This is amazing. Put your hand up if you barbecue your meat, if you burn the crap out of your meat when you have a barbecue. Put your hand up. Right. Put your hand up if you love AFL. All right, I'm a footy player, so I'm confused as why there's no more hands. Right, so. Put your hand up if you're a racist. There's a few brave souls out there. See, this is the thing. This is the problem with stereotypes. They're not reflective, are they? And they create a barrier for people creating real relationships, strong ties and strong understandings about each other. And I don't think reconciliation is so much about us having to reconcile with Aboriginal people. I think it's reconciling with each other. I think it's actually starting to create opportunities to sit down, engage and integrate all of our knowledges in this country to make a strong and unified Australia so we can confidently stand there on the world stage and say, we are one. Now, I believe that one particular component of Australian society or Australian culture, which is one that I think we all know, but how much we actually interact and connect and hold on to that is an ongoing debate, is multiculturalism. Multiculturalism is one of the main components of our Australian society. It has been ever since 1770, and even if you go as far back to when the first Australians were the first known of this country, the custodians and traditional owners, many don't know that there's 300 different Indigenous nations in Australia. There are 600 different dialects recorded and spoken. Diversity and multiculturalism is Australian culture, is Australian society. So the more opportunities that we can provide in our country to be able to embrace that, I think we are going well ahead to the unified Australia. I'll leave you with this. My mum is a non-Indigenous woman. My dad is an Indigenous man. And I truly believe when Indigenous and non-Indigenous people come together, they create beautiful things.